This video is about the Russo-Japanese War. The war started on 8th of February 1904 with a Japanese surprise attack on the Russian fleet. The formal end of the war was the Treaty of Portsmouth, dated on the 5th of September 1905. To the background and first the Japanese perspective. During the second half of the 19th century, Japan developed into a modern and industrialized state. Furthermore, Japan had expansionist ambitions, and they could put these ambitions into reality by winning the Sino-Japanese War. Japan gained control over Korea and occupied southern Manchuria, but they had to withdraw from southern Manchuria after being pressured by the Triple Alliance consisting of Germany, France and Russia. And that should not happen again. Therefore, the Japanese formed an alliance with the British, who should prevent European powers from intervening. The Russians. Russia leased Port Arthur from the Chinese and had for the first time an ice-free port in the Pacific. During the Boxer Rebellion, Russian troops occupied southern Manchuria, and after the conflict they did not withdraw. Furthermore, Russia expanded her economic and political influence into Korea. And then, of course, in southern Manchuria and Korea, Japan's and Russia's interests must collide. Firstly, there was an attempt to solve this whole thing through negotiations, but these negotiations failed, especially because Russia, as a European power, did not take Japan as an Asian country too seriously. So the Japanese decided to go to war, and there was then the surprise attack on Port Arthur. However, what was more important from a military point of view was a naval battle near Incheon. This Japanese victory allowed the Japanese to land troops, which then moved towards the river Yalu. On the 10th of February 1904, Japan declared war on Russia. At the river Yalu, there was the first battle won by Japan, and this victory allowed the Japanese to advance towards Port Arthur. They also prevailed in the next battle, and then the Japanese could lay siege on Port Arthur. Now, two naval battles were important. The Russian fleet tried to break out of Port Arthur. It was an indecisive naval battle, but the Russians returned to Port Arthur, so they were out of the equation. Another squadron of the Russian Navy should intervene, but also here the Japanese Navy won the battle, and this squadron was out of the equation too. The next battle was won again by Japan, and here you can see this battle alone caused 42,000 casualties. It was a quite brutal war. Important was that the Tsar decided to send his Baltic fleet, so the bulk of its entire navy, to the Pacific to sort out this conflict coming from the sea. But back to the war at land. There was an indecisive battle, but it was a strategic victory for Japan because the Russians retreated and they did not relieve Port Arthur, and Port Arthur surrendered on the 2nd of January 1905. There were more battles coming, they were indecisive, but you can understand them as a Japanese victory because the Russians failed to regain the initiative. After the Japanese victory then, the Russians retreated to northern Manchuria and the war was more or less decided. But now there was the naval battle, and most people probably associate this war with this naval battle. The Russian Baltic fleet arrived and was so clearly defeated, 21 ships were sunk. After that, Japanese forces invaded Sakhalin, and then the Treaty of Portsmouth ended the war. The results. Russia accepted Korea as part of the Japanese sphere of influence. Russia ceded the southern part of Sakhalin to Japan, and Japan took over Port Arthur. Furthermore, Russian troops withdrew from Manchuria. Now, for the first time, an Asian country had defeated a European power. And this war was a very important catalyst for the Russian Revolution of 1905, which weakened the Tsar and the traditional hierarchical societal system of Russia. Japan's hegemonial position in Asia was consolidated, and Japan should expand further. 1910, Japan annexed Korea, and then there was the Second Sino-Japanese War starting in 1937. That was the Russo-Japanese War in 5.